It's the end of the year. The holidays are coming up. This is usually a beautiful time for self-reflection. Let's go back and think about the highlights and the lessons for the year. And let's set our goals for the new year and set our New Year's resolutions. Although the only thing is, I actually don't love setting New Year's resolutions. I actually haven't set New Year's resolutions over the last couple of years. I personally find them to be a little depressing. So I'm going to talk about what I do instead of New Year's resolutions and what you should do instead too. Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, the first Canadian to win Survivor. But before that, I was a Filipino immigrant and corporate perfectionist who felt doubted and overlooked. Now I'm here to prove that every journey, whether messy, beautiful, or unexpected, is worth celebrating. Every Monday, I bring you candid conversations and relatable pep talks with guests who've defied expectations. If you're ready to feel seen, celebrated, and empowered, you're in the right place. And here, I'm always happy to see you. I don't know why we as a society started to set New Year's resolutions. I guess knowing that there's a new year ahead, that's when we're going to think about the new year, new me. That's when we believe we can give ourselves permission for reinvention. Although I think that self-growth and all of that amazing stuff doesn't need to be tied to a certain time of the year. And it probably does make us feel productive and maybe hopeful that we can set these goals and attain them sometime in the new year. And I am a goals girl, although I'm trying hard to not be as much of a goals girl, but I am a goals girl. And I'm the type of person, when I set a goal, I do anything I can to make it happen. The thing with New Year's resolutions are often these are goals that might be timed or might have specific numbers or might have specific outcomes tied to them. And we give ourselves the long runway of the next 12 months to reach them. And if we don't reach them, or if we find that we're a few months in and we've either forgotten about the resolutions or we haven't made the right progress towards the resolutions, it's very possible that we can feel quite shitty. I know I have certainly felt like that. I have many goals and many ideas, and, I'll decide, okay, I'm going to work towards being able to get back into running a half marathon. And then I never make any steps towards it. I have run half marathons in the past though, but every now and then I'm like, should I run another one? And then I just don't, because I realize I don't need to. But I think that with New Year's resolutions, we kind of set ourselves up to feel a little bad, right? We set ourselves up to set this amazing goal and then to potentially feel guilty and decide that we're not even going to go for anything, or maybe even relish in the fact that we set these goals and we're just not the type of people to reach them. And if you are a person who isn't as interested in setting goals, that is totally fine. That is totally on you. But I personally haven't been setting New Year's resolutions over the last few years because, again, I don't want to create more situations where I'm artificially setting a bar and then feeling bad when I don't reach it. Instead, this is what I've been doing for the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years. Instead, I actually pick a theme or a word for the year. And I use that word as my North Star, as my guiding light for the rest of the year. And here's why I think you should do that too. I think number one, having a theme or a word, it creates more of a vibe and more of a feeling that you want to achieve versus a checklist of things. And that means that you can always be in the process of living up to that word. And you can always pivot partway through the year to make sure that you're getting back on track with that word that you have set out for the year. Whereas if you have this resolution list and you don't check off everything on the checklist, it could be hard to pivot and get back on track depending on when in the year you remember these resolutions. But when you come up with that word for the year, you always have the opportunity to pivot towards it. And by doing this, it really encourages that self-trust and self-awareness. And most importantly, it removes shame from the process. If you set a word as your intention or your theme for the year, you have so many opportunities to live with that word in mind. And if you do even one thing to live with that word in mind, then you're already a success. So is it setting the bar lower? I don't know. Maybe. I think that we probably set the bar really high all the time. But this is giving us the permission to always be winning. So in 2025, my word was actually growth. And I posted this on my Instagram at the beginning of the year. Every now and then I've had to go back and check to remind myself what the word is. So again, I don't have my New Year's word at the forefront all of the time. But I selected growth because I had felt that over the last couple of years, especially after winning Survivor, I go through this massive change where every facet of my life looks different. And I went through so many years of transformation. And then I started to really build the foundation for the chapter of life that I entered and started to really get my bearings in terms of my identity, in terms of career, in terms of relationships, in terms of where and how I wanted to live and really building that foundation for myself. So that's what I'd been doing the years prior. And I really felt like in 2025, my opportunity was to now grow on top of this foundation that's been set. So if I have laid out all of the stone and the cement and I know where I am and where I want to be, now is my opportunity to grow. And naturally, thinking of growth, I was like, okay, this is about expansion. This is about more. This is about confidence. So I think that when I set out to grow, I thought, okay, maybe I can grow the different lines of business, or I could grow my social media following or podcast downloads or something, all of those numbers that are easily measurable. And I was also thinking about growing personally. I think there's always an opportunity to grow. And I just remember telling myself, okay, this can be a year where once again, I am figuring out what is the new version of me I need to grow into, or what are the blind spots that I have in my personal journey that I need to address and to grow on top of. So I was thinking linear, expansive, amazing growth. And now looking back at the year, I have definitely grown 100%. I think I grew in some of the ways that I set out to grow. And I grew in a lot of ways that I didn't really expect. For example, in terms of my career, yes, I had career growth. The different lines of business that I work on have grown. I've been able to do more keynotes in amazing places. I've been able to be on bigger stages. I've been able to travel more, all of that fun stuff. But I've also been able to grow professionally in unexpected ways. So being able to show up professionally in new ways where I really own who I am and what I do. I think that previously I would be the person who would think, okay, I guess I keynote, I guess I host, I guess I podcast, I guess I do this, but I'd always be comparing myself to the people who were ahead of me or who have been doing it longer, that I couldn't really own those roles and those titles and those projects that I made for myself. But I think that this year I've been really able to own who I am and what I do, and really own that I do these things for a living. So that was an unexpected type of career growth for me. I also have been able to accept compliments more. And it is really nice when people compliment me on work. And I've had people tell me that what I've been able to do over the last few years has been an inspiration. And I think it's one of those things where previously I would hear that, and then in my head, I would think, oh my God, but these people don't know that I'm still struggling and trying to figure out X, Y, Z. So I would accept the compliment in the conversation, but inside I would be freaking out. But this year, as part of my career growth that was unexpected, I have been able to really internally accept the compliments and sit with them and think, yeah, I have done all of those things that people have complimented me for. And I think that I've grown in other ways career-wise. I mean, as a keynote speaker, now that I've been doing my speeches for a few years, I feel like now I'm able to be more comfortable and even ham it up a little bit on stage. So the way that I grew career-wise, it wasn't just in terms of the numbers, but it was really me as a person and as a professional who grew in unexpected ways. And I knew that creatively I wanted to grow. I mean, I really wanted to grow in terms of podcasting, social media, all of those number type things. And again, I grew in unexpected ways creatively. As folks who have been listening to the podcast for a while know, the tone of the podcast has changed a lot over the last couple of years. Even when I think about the episodes I'm releasing now versus the episodes I was releasing in season 1, when I was talking to a lot of reality TV people, and all of those conversations were amazing. But as I went on in the process, I realized that I do want to lean into content that really helps you, the listener, to feel energized and confident and capable. And I really gave myself the permission this year to grow into that direction and evolve the direction of the show. And even in terms of social media, something that helped me to grow in an unexpected way is I started to post more consistently and started to post even if truly in my mind, sometimes the things I'd post, I'd feel a little cringe, but I was like, no, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it. And those things actually helped me to grow in terms of the numbers for the first time in a while on social media. So really unexpected creative growth there. And I think another way that I grew professionally this year that I'm really proud of is I actually, for the first time, was able to outsource some of the things that I'm working on. So I have awesome folks who are now helping me behind the scenes with my podcasting. I have amazing folks who are helping me behind the scenes in terms of social media. And for me, that not only signals a growth in terms of business and work, but it really is a sign of personal growth as well. Growing up in an immigrant household, being in a household where the initial instinct was to not spend money where you don't have to. And if you could do it yourself and save the money instead of paying for somebody else to do it. And I think that by allowing myself to actually recognize that I need the help and find the right people and carve out some of the budget to get people on board and actually pay them to help me out with different pieces of my work, that is me saying to myself, yes, you and your time and your efforts and your career are worth it and you are worth investing in. And that is an amazing, unexpected piece of personal growth that I went through this year as well. And because of that, now I am giving myself permission to really put real effort into the next creative projects that I want to be working on. What are such creative projects? Hopefully I will tell you at this time next year, but these are big pie in the sky ideas that I've had for years. And I think I just always thought that I am not the person who does that, or I need to wait for the random person to discover me and to give me the opportunity to do that. But now that I have invested in myself and I have freed up more time by investing in folks to help me out with work, I have given myself permission in 2026 that I am going to start taking tangible steps towards the next creative dreams that I have for myself. Personally, this has been a big growing year for me too. I will be honest, I definitely had some time this year where frankly, I was in a funk. I don't know if you would have noticed from social media. I know that I really do try to be intentional about the parts of my life that I show on social media, but I really was in a funk for a few months this year. And maybe it's the age I'm at. I had turned 36 this year, but I really had a lot of moments where I stopped and I would ask myself, what do I really want in life? I even actually gave myself the permission to take a week off in the summer, not traveling. So giving myself a staycation week. And for anybody who works for themselves, you know how hard it is to take any time off from working, let alone giving yourself a full week to not be working. And I just forced myself to have the time to explore different neighborhoods in the city that I don't normally go to, or read or do things that I always wanted to do that I hadn't gotten around to, go and visit different shops and cafes and restaurants that I'd always wanted to go to, but that were just not in my direct neighborhood. And I just never had the time to get there. And I was able to be really present and take a moment and enjoy the simple parts of life. And through doing that, it kicked off a lot of this self-questioning and the self-discovery about what I really wanted next. And I think I really needed that time where I wasn't being productive. Because as somebody whose work is really tied to who I am, it's really easy for your work and your sense of self to become intertwined. And I really needed to remind myself, who am I when I'm not being productive and I'm not pushing whatever project or whatever thing I am working on? And as I was going through this and I was reflecting on what I wanted next, I know that I have had so many amazing life experiences, right? I've had incredible dreams coming true, dreams that people could only imagine that they could achieve. And I know that I've been able to check a lot of things off the list and have all these goals. And that is so incredible and so amazing. And I know how to go after those things. I think that those are almost like second nature for me, going after the next thing. But I realized that what I wanted to experience in this next chapter of life is, I think, that safety and stability at home. I've been really intentional over the last couple of years about building a safe and wonderful home life. And it's not to say I've ever lived anywhere unsafe, but I mean, having a home where I can just go there and I can decompress and unwind and I am without judgment and I am loved. And I realize that that is something that I really want to cultivate in the next chapter of my life. And I think that that's an amazing thing, but coming to that conclusion also means a lot of hard self-reflection, because then you start to look at the things that are existing in your life that might be obstacles to that stability and that safety that I wanted. And that caused me to really think a lot about different relationships, different boundaries or lack thereof, the types of connections that I want more of and that I want less of. And then it became a lot of nesting. And a lot of this self-reflection led me to the major growth step that I had in the last couple of weeks, which was I got my very first dog. So I adopted my first dog. Her name is Ginny. She is an 8-year-old Shih Tzu rescue. She is incredible. She's the cutest thing ever. But I realized that that was a step that I really wanted to take towards this stable home life. And who knows, if you've been following me for a while, that my eggs are frozen. Don't be surprised if I end up having a kid in the next couple of years based on how I'm thinking. But I wanted to make sure that I was still growing and expanding and doing all those things on the big macro career scale that I am comfortable with. And that I'm also growing personally in my quiet private life. And as I set these annual words and themes for myself, I do love to reflect on how they went over the year. When I think about growth and I think about what really surprised me, if you remember SMART goals, so goals that can be timed and measurable and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've read it in a business book somewhere, but I'm used to growth being very measurable. And I'm really surprised at how a lot of the growth I experienced this year is the things that you can't measure. Like the way that I allowed myself to embrace ease and not push myself and realize that growing is not just from constantly pushing yourself into the uncomfortable and into the next thing. Sometimes growing is cultivating the ease and the presence of where you are right now. And growth is also accepting that certain parts of your life may have run their course, whether it's certain chapters, certain groups you're part of, certain relationships, jobs, whatever it is. Sometimes growth is not pushing. Sometimes growth is staying still and accepting, okay, where I'm at right now is no longer a fit for the things that I knew before. And I'm really pleasantly surprised at all those unmeasurable ways that I grew, and also all of the ways that I grew where I wasn't necessarily pushing myself towards the next goal. And when I look back, I also ask myself, what is something I was really proud of this year in relation to the word or the theme that I set? And I'm really surprised and proud that I was able to let go of control in a lot of ways. Again, when I would think about setting goals and growing, I think I always thought, okay, if I need to grow in this way, these are the steps that I need to take there. So if I follow those steps, then I will get there. And a lot of the times that pays off. But the type of growth that I experienced this year, it was really accepting that a lot of things are out of my control. And on top of that, the growth that I had this year, it really required me to stop and say, how do I feel about how this thing is going? What do I think about how this thing is going? And if it would feel not good, or if it would feel uncomfortable, or if it would feel like it was no longer aligned with who I am, then I would also sit in that and accept, okay, this isn't working anymore. That's a bummer. That sucks, but that is okay. I think I'm really proud of how I allowed myself to sit in that discomfort and then accept the further discomfort of what would happen if I let go of certain things, all in the pursuit of this theme of growth. So that is how I chose the word that I wanted last year. And that is all of the ways that I grew. So I hope you can see that you don't need to set that specific resolution. You can set a theme and then you can keep checking against that theme. And you can allow yourself to be surprised when that theme comes to life in ways that you didn't really expect. And it might be uncomfortable, but often it is for the best. Okay, so in 2025, my word was growth. What is my word for 2026? And this was a tough one. I had been thinking about this for a while, but actually after last week's episode, I was speaking with Sarah Surrett, the queer therapist. And if you haven't checked out that episode yet, I highly recommend it, especially if you are a queer person heading into the holidays and you need to figure out how to have self-compassion and how to have hard conversations with family. But after we were recording, Sarah and I ended up grabbing a coffee. And Sarah said that their word for the previous year was actually trust. And I really liked that. And I am now going to take a page from Sarah's book, and my word for 2026 will be trust. Okay, and this is why. As I said before, over the last few years, I went through a huge transformation. So many facets of my life changed. And then I was able to build the foundation. And then I was able to grow on top of it. And now I want to trust that the seeds that I have planted are going to grow in the most beautiful way possible. And I need to trust that my instincts and that my gut and all of the things that have guided me to this point so far will continue to guide me into my next chapter. And I need to trust that the things that I want out of my life and my relationships and my career and all of the personal life things that I don't share online, I need to trust that those will continue to grow in the right direction. And of course, as someone who is still ambitious and still has a lot of goals, I want to have faith that those big dreams that I have in my heart and in my head, that they are possible and that they are coming true. And they're probably coming true before I even know it. Essentially, I'm choosing to trust the process and trust where I am at. So here's the ways that I want to trust myself next year. In terms of trust in myself, trusting my instincts, trusting my gut. In terms of trusting my path, I need to believe that I am exactly where I need to be and things are unfolding more beautifully than I can ever imagine. And I just need to keep taking one step forward. I need to trust in my vision. I mean, I love manifesting. I've manifested a lot of things in my life. I am so fortunate to be living the life that I'm living right now. And I need to trust that the vision that I have in my head for myself, it's inevitable and all of those things are going to come true. And I also really want to trust my experiences. I still have imposter syndrome about a lot of things. Even though I podcast, I work as a speaker, I do all these things, there are still times that I question my own credibility to talk about things. And I really want to have trust in terms of my own experiences. So trusting that my queerness and the experiences I've had in my queerness are enough for me to speak about queerness more openly in the future. Or to trust that, yes, I have been working for myself in media for the last 4 years, and I can say I am a media professional and I have enough experience where I could even help other folks out. And I need to have trust that my perspectives, whether it's on life or on reality TV or anything, I need to trust that my perspectives are enough and grounded in truth as well. And essentially, I have to just trust that all of the seeds that I have planted, they are growing. So here's a few ways throughout the year that I'm planning to really check in with myself and make sure that trust remains at the forefront, or at the very least, a very important consideration when I make decisions next year. If I have a big decision to make, of course, I'm going to do research, ask people questions, all of that stuff. At the end of the day, I need to trust my gut and follow my instincts and know that no matter the outcome, that I have what it takes to make that decision for myself. Another way is if I feel anxiety or self-doubt or imposter syndrome, I need to remind myself to trust the person inside who has already made all of the decisions to get me to this point, and that if she has gotten me to this point, then I can trust her to take me to the next point and the next step and the next chapter. And of course, as a former perfectionist, I need to trust that I don't need to have full control over everything. And that maybe even by releasing the grip a little bit, I leave room to be surprised in the most beautiful, unexpected ways. So in 2026, I'm going to be trusting myself. I would love to know if you will pick a word for 2026. So here are a few questions you can ask yourself if you want to figure out your word. I think that with your word for 2026, it needs to be a combination of feeling like a warm hug, something that you think you could retreat into, something that feels welcoming, that doesn't scare you off. You want to lean into that word. And it needs to be a word that challenges you a little bit. So a warm hug with a bit of tough love. And also think about the word that you want to use to describe your next chapter. So yes, I know that we all have regrets. I know that we all probably believe that we should be further along than we are, and that if we just did this one thing differently, maybe we would be in a different spot. And I get it. I have experienced all those things too. There's nothing you can do about it. The spot you are in right now is the spot you are in, and it's amazing and it's perfect, even if it doesn't seem like it. Ruminating all of those things won't change where you are right now. But what is the word that you want to use to describe your next chapter? And think big pie in the sky. If you didn't have any obstacles, if you didn't have to hold yourself back in any way, what is the word that you would use to describe your next chapter? And I think if you think about the warm hug, the welcome challenge, and the next chapter, you can figure out your word for 2026. And remember, there is no wrong word. And it can also be like a New Year's resolution. You're not beholden to it. You can choose a word, and if you forget about it at some point in the year or you don't end up following it, who cares? This is just a fun exercise for you. You don't need to be stuck on this word, okay? But if you do think of a word, let me know, because I would love to hear it. So if you do think of your word for 2026, either leave it in the YouTube comments, comment on the podcast's Instagram, send a DM to the podcast Instagram, because I would love to hear how we are defining our 2026 for ourselves. So I am looking forward to more trust in 2026. And I have to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for trusting me and tuning into the podcast. It has been one of the greatest gifts to be able to connect with you every week. I truly am so grateful that there are folks who are willing to spend time with me every week. And I will definitely continue to podcast. This is actually going to be my last episode for 2025. I'm going to really wind down, focus on my safe, secure personal life, focus on even getting my dog all settled. Oh my gosh, she's such a sweet angel. I will tell you more about her in the new year. So I'm going to be wrapping up the podcast for 2025 at the end of this episode, but I will be back in 2026, and you will continue to get pep talks like this and amazing guest interviews. So if you ever have any guests that you would love to hear on the show, or even any topics you'd love to hear me talk about, message me, DM me, send me a comment at any time. And again, I love creating this content for you and connecting with you. And I hope that through listening to this, somebody feels a bit more optimistic about their year next year. But I trust that it's going to be an amazing 2026 for me and for you. And I hope you trust me in knowing that the podcast will be back in 2026. But until then, If you haven't already, it would mean so much if you could subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. It is at Happy to See Me Pod. Thank you so much for spending a bit of time with me this week, and I will be happy to see you in the new year.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Sonar Network.